Good evening. Settle in comfortably. Throw another log on the fire and let the darkness retreat just one step further. Have you ever noticed that some people wear their loneliness like armor? Shiny, impenetrable, forged from intellect and sarcasm. They convince themselves that solitude is not the absence of others, but the presence of freedom. Our protagonist today, linguistics professor Arthur Higgins, was exactly that kind of man. To him, Christmas was not a holiday, but annual collective hysteria that disrupted his schedule. He lived in an old Victorian house, piled so high with books they served as extra insulation. Arthur was 60. He was dry, sharp-tongued, and a brilliant scholar. He believed in facts, the etymology of words, and high-quality tea. He did not believe in miracles, selflessness, or Santa Claus. But that year, on December 12th, his logic developed a crack. It all started with a teapot. On the morning of December 12th, Arthur found a box on his porch. No card, no sender's name. Just a marker scrawl. For the professor. Inside lay a teapot. Not a souvenir with reindeer on it, but a severe cast-iron Japanese teapot. Perfect. Arthur frowned. His old teapot had cracked a week ago, and he, burning his fingers, still hadn't gotten around to buying a new one. Delivery error, he decided. Someone confused the address. He left the box on the porch, expecting someone to return for it. But by evening, it was covered in snow. Arthur, grumbling about human negligence, brought it inside. I will keep it safe until the owner is found, he told himself, brewing tea in it. The tea turned out magnificent. The next day, December 13th, a new package lay on the porch. Inside was a scarf. Wool, dark grey, checkered. Arthur froze. 3 days ago, he had lost his scarf in the university park and had since been walking around with his coat collar turned up, coughing from the cold. This could no longer be a mistake. Arthur engaged scientist mode. He started a special notebook. Hypothesis 1, student prank. Goal, to mock my absent-mindedness. Hypothesis 2, social experiment by the psychology department. Hypothesis 3, courtship from a madwoman. Every morning, he kept watch by the window. He got up at 5 a.m. He hid behind the curtains, but the porch remained empty. The moment he stepped away for a minute to get coffee, a new object appeared on the mat. The gifts continued to arrive, and as time went on, they became frighteningly accurate. Day 4, a jar of rare Manuka honey, exactly what his doctor had recommended for his throat tickle. Day 7, a first edition of Thomas Hardy's poems, a book he had been hunting in antique shops for 5 years. Day 9, a set of expensive fountain pens. He had complained about his current ones aloud only to himself. Arthur was furious and afraid. Someone was watching him. Someone knew his habits, his needs, his secret desires better than he did himself. "Come out," he shouted to the empty street, standing in his robe in the freezing cold, clutching the volume of Hardy. "I do not need charity. I demand an explanation." In response, only the wind chased the snowflakes. Arthur stopped sleeping. He analyzed his social circle. Colleagues, they disliked him. Students, they feared him. Neighbors, he didn't even know their names. He was an invisible man who suddenly found himself under the microscope of kindness. And the scariest part, he began to wait for these gifts. His cold house was filling with things that made life warmer. The teapot warmed the water. The scarf warmed his throat. The book warmed his soul. His defenses were crumbling. December 24th arrived. Christmas Eve, the 12th day. Arthur sat in an armchair facing the door. He was ready. Today, he would catch this Christmas stalker. All day, nothing happened. Twilight deepened. At 8 p.m., there was not a knock, but a timid ring of the doorbell. Arthur threw the door open, ready to unleash the full force of his rhetoric on the visitor. On the doorstep stood no mystical figure. There stood Mrs. Gable, a small, withered old lady from the house across the street, the very one whose cat he had once chased off his lawn, the one to whom he gave a curt nod once every 6 months. In her hands, she held no box. She held a tray covered with a towel. It smelled of roast duck. "Good evening, Professor," she said quietly. "I saw that you haven't had a light on in the kitchen all evening. I thought maybe you didn't want to cook alone." Arthur was struck dumb. All his hypotheses, all his logical constructions crumbled to dust. "It was you?" he rasped. "The teapot? The book? How did you know about the book?" Mrs. Gable smiled, and her face crinkled with rays of wrinkles. "Professor, you read lectures by the open window in the summer. I heard you quoting Hardy and the scarf. I saw you shivering at the bus stop. At our age, one must protect one's throat." "But why?" asked Arthur. I am not the most pleasant neighbour. Because no one should be cold at Christmas, Arthur. Even those who claim to love the cold." Arthur stood in the doorway. Logic screamed at him to slam the door and remain in his safe fortress. But his heart, thawed by 12 days of care, whispered otherwise. "Mrs. Gable," he said, stepping aside and opening the way, "I have some excellent Japanese tea. Will you keep me company?" That evening, Professor Arthur Higgins received his greatest 12th gift. It was not a thing. It was the discovery that the world does not consist only of facts and theories. It consists of people who notice us, even when we try our hardest to be invisible. Arthur realized that miracles do not contradict science. Kindness simply has its own physics, and its law is simple. Warmth is always transferred from person to person, if only one opens the damper. Look around. Maybe someone nearby just needs a new teapot, or simply your attention. Merry Christmas.